the second part of the first lesson of world literature. But before that, I'll give you first the idea why I am using face shield and why my background is like this, because I'm in the hospital and I'm taking care of mama and nanay. Uh, to use my time effectively and at the same time using the safe healthy protocols, I'm using this one because I'm in the hospital. So I have only short period of time going to January 4, and I'm the only one teaching 21st century literature in Marinduque National High School. So I need to really use my time effectively for my topics in 21st century. So this time we're going to discuss about now the second part of the top of the lesson of world literature, which is about this one, what is 21st century literary genres, traditions, and forms from different cultures. So let's start now. Let's start with first with 21st century literary genres, traditions, and forms from the different culture, specifically with the year of contemporary and 21st century. So let's start with contemporary literature. So contemporary literature is basically from 1940s and then going to the present or before 21st century. So here at the contemporary literature, this reflects current trends in life and culture, and because these things can change often, contemporary literature changes often as well. Since from the classical one, the classical setting of different stories or different poems or different forms of literature. So the trick here in contemporary literature is what is trending. So what is trending into the society, or what is trending into the environment, and what is the trending issues. So usually the trending issues are the ones of the topics of the writers when they are making their own literature. So this also reflects author's perspective and can be cynical. So questions, facts, historical perspective, which presents two contradictory arguments side by side, like from rich to poor, from the high class to low class, so like that. This one is a reality-based stories, which with strong characters and believable stories. So from the Romeo and Juliet, going to Hamlet, going to the other stories from the English and the American, Japanese, or Chinese. And usually here at contemporary literature, they build strong characters wherein the audience will uh, or the audience will remember these strong characters. So from Spider-Man, Superman, and the other characters that will make people remember. So next one is about, this is well defined, uh, realistic, highly developed characters in a realistic, sometimes harsh environment wherein the people, diba, when you're watching like Superman, the people are so bad na, and at the same time, they're doing so lots of bad things, or like there are lots of tragedies and like that. That's why superheroes will be coming in to fight for the injustices like that. So often the stories are driven. So next one is the literature is ironic and reflects current political, social, and personal issues, like the ones that I'm telling you, the societal issues. It's about inequality, or politically driven, or if it's about personal issues within themselves, like that. So another one is it may reflect a personal cynicism, disillusionment, and frustration. Frustration of the government, frustration about the environment, frustration from the people, frustration from the culture itself. So that's the thing for contemporary. Another is that facts are questioned, as are historical perspectives. That's why it is very important when creating a story. You need to look into the historical perspective of the situation, and also you look into where does the author coming from, what century, what year, And with that, you need to search about it and try to incorporate what happened during the 80s or 90s or 60s and 70s and incorporate it with the story that you are watching. Because as a writer, you need to be historically knowledgeable before coming up with a good literature. So often presents two contradictory arguments from the good and the bad, the positive and the negative, from high to low, the rich and poor, like that, or arguments of the pros and the cons. So always in a story there are two sides, not only in stories but also in poems. That's why as audience we do have different perspectives. Next one is about the literature may reflect a growing skepticism in the existence of God, as well as a distrust or lack of faith in traditional institutions. So, as you may look into the different like Korean, Chinese, African, it is clearly seen and from the different literature, the religion really affects the story and or the faith of the writer really affects the whole story. So that's why it is reflected to a growing skepticism of the existence of their own God or the one that they believe in to the different literature that they present into the different literary forms. So here at 2000s or the 21st century, there is or we saw a steep increase in the acceptability of literature of all types, inspired by the coming of age of millions of people who enjoy the work of writers of speculative fiction. So what do you mean by speculative fiction? Speculative fiction is basically more of comprises of different kinds of genre from the fantastical fiction genres, science fiction, fantasy, horror, weird fiction, supernatural fiction, the one that has lots of heroes, or like the one has lots of explosion or scientific explanation, or like the one stories of earthquakes, stories of tsunami, like that. So utopian and dystopian fiction. Anyway, this different kinds of fiction will be understood in our next lesson. Apocalyptic, post-apocalyptic fiction, and alternate history in literature, as well as related static motion and visual art. So as you see before, way back in the contemporary, wherein there's a black and white background. Here at 2000 already, they have different angles of different stories from the different cameras that they are using. And because of the different cameras that they are using, they create an illusion of different sides of stories from the different corners of the story formed into the literary forms. So that's why they are very more of movements, more of a visual thing, more of visual virtual arts, so like that. So unlike before that when we talk about explosion, bugs, gano lang and all. But here in 2000, they already use different effects to make an illusion of it is really a real setting. So here also we're gonna be talking about the 21st century world literature from the different cultures like the Chinese literature, Japanese literature, Indian literature, African literature, American literature, and English literature. So let's start with Chinese literature. Here, Chinese literature, basically the literature is really is coming from China, from Asia, so this is affected by the impact of internet, which has become an important medium for the dissemination of politically sensitive work. So Chinese or China is very well known from the different dynasties. So from the different dynasties wherein lots of events happen from the different dynasties. So resurgence of science fantasy in its scene since the late Qing dynasty, no epics of either folk or literary variety, and hardly any narrative or descriptive poems. And they are long by the standards of the world literature. They are very well known for the Sinophone literature and the modern Chinese poetry. Sinophone literature is about redefining Chinese literature as a field determined by language rather than purely by geography. So it's more of expressions, emotions, while for the modern Chinese poetry is about it depends on ending rhyme and tonal meter for its cadence and characterized by its compactness and brevity. So next one is about Japanese literature. And Japanese is very well known for haiku, the short poem. So Japanese literature from Japan, they are very rich in terms of its culture, especially literature. This is marked by a strong and intentional break with tradition and the nation-centered and group orientation values. This break includes the strong reaction against established religious, political, and social views. So if you're gonna be looking into Japanese literature or stories or poem, they are more of feminism, more of women empowerment, individualism, more of own emotion, internationalism, more of connection to the world, liberalism, freedom, and proletarian emerged during this period, which is about concerned with subconscious. So something, when we talk about subconscious, is something not present or into your state of mind. So, new literary forms and style, like a novel in the first POV, is written like an biographical confessional type of narration. So, that's for Japanese literature. Next one is about Indian literature. So, if we talk about Indian, Japanese kasi it's more of I think they have also Buddhism, the same thing with Chinese like the Judaism like that. Here at Indian literature, they are very well known about for the religion of Islamic like that. So simultaneous or I think they have also other religions. So I am talking about this because from the different religions that they have, it is clearly seen into their literary forms. So simultaneous coexistence of the post-colonial state apparatuses with an ideology which was liberal and humanist seen in the areas of public life like the academic scene. So I know you're very familiar with an Indian, I don't know if it's an Indian, but the Three Idiots, wherein they are very more of the academic scene. At the same time, they are representing also the culture of Incheon. Is it Incheon? Yeah. Okay. So realism. Realism is about outcome of the creation of reading public, which was trying to construct and identify in the context of the anti-colonial struggles and nation building. So this one is combined by liberal reformist ideology with an affirmation of an Indian cultural specificity. So more of freedom. So and more of change. Next one is this concept also, however, was middle class and Hindu. So you may see into their stories or into their poems the different classes of people. And the realist novel, its focus is on growth and individual freedom and transform in the Indian context with the economic conditions of uneven capitalism. So it's about the inequality of in terms of economy or in terms of the state of a person into the society. Okay. Next one also is basis for realism for Indian literature. The economics in the existence of capitalist exploitation, political, and then social condition. So they are very particular with economic and more of political and social conditions within the society into their literature in India. So next one is about African literature. I know you're very familiar with African, right? The music of Jaiho, like that, or what else? Um, I'm not very sure of the well-known African, but anyway, I'll be telling you that one into my next video. So, but here at African literature, this is about distinct influence from African current events and recent history. So the themes here is both more about post-imperialism, more of colonialism, and cultural upheaval, more of the differences of people within the country, and then the violence. So there are topics present in previous centuries which are still very much relevant in modern day African nations. And one of those is the African poetry. So African poetry, they use their literary or literature as a form of protest from like inequalities. So theorists describe it as having a post-colonial viewpoint, referring to the period after European nations tried to govern African nations. So African's modern history, this is influenced by neo-colonialism, cultural change, and clashes between political parties and religious ideologies. Here, the modern African writer is more of looking away from the internal individual struggle and instead of shift the focus to the struggles of American. So if you're gonna be looking into the situation of the Africans, um, you will see how poor the life of people there. That's why they're trying to show it into their literary forms or also into their literary examples or literature. So here, and also the struggles of African nations still trying to develop after gaining independence from European imperialism. So, and also about showing their freedom in terms of how they think, how they speak, how they work, their physical activity, and also the economic struggles of the people, like divisions of classes. So, like the ones that I've told you, the high profile and the low profile, into the average, into the condition, into the society, and various other conflicts that modern day Africans nation faces. So that's the African literature. Next one would be American literature. So here at American literature, this is concerned with relationships and connections between people and emotion. Provoking storytelling is common. So here at American literature is about more of giving stories or telling the stories of what is happening into America. So, like for example, the Huckleberry Finn, the Tom Sawyer, wherein it clearly depicts about the adventures of the two individuals like that. So another one is the value of media and culture is changing the way this movement is perceived, and more of the use of technology for the movement of literature. So they are more of blogging, as in BLOG, wherein they express themselves, and also more of expression, because Americans are really more of opinions, more of what they feel, of what they have experienced. Next one is addressing universal themes seen through the eyes of their culture. Another juxtaposition of the ordinary with magical elements. Two faces, two sides of the story. Another is fantastic elements are interwoven in the realistic fiction. Here at American, they are since they are more of really advanced one. Um, they are using more of fictitious fantasy and all, wherein they can see it at the literary forms that they are presenting, wherein you can clearly see it also into their movies. Next one is about English literature. So if we talk about English literature, this is more about William Shakespeare, and I know you're very familiar with William Shakespeare. That is more of king and queen, high class people, more of classic like that. So, as the 21st century got underway, history remained under the outstanding concern of English literature. So, all the contemporary issues such as global warming and international conflicts, but this is more also of receiving attentions. We're still more disposed to look back. It's more of looking back of what happened way back then. That's why into their literary forms or stories, this is more of unrequited love or more of tragic story. So, although they had entered into a new millennium, writers seem to find greater imaginative stimulus into the past than in the present and the future. That's why if you're gonna be looking into the English literature, they still depicts the king and queen because they think that they need to preserve the stories of way back then and still present it with our new generation now. So that's it for the part two of the lesson of or of the first lesson of world literature about the nature and origin of literature. So I want to end my lesson. I want to end this discussion with the following inspirational quote. Keep going, keep pushing, keep believing, keep trusting, and keep God first. Whoever God that you believe in, but trust God, what whoever it is for you, like if you're an iglesia or born again, Jehovah or Christian or Catholic or whatsoever. But I hope you'll be guided with this quote that you need to keep going, you need to keep pushing, and keep believing in yourself and trust yourself and always keep God at the center of your heart. That would be all, everyone, and I hope you stay safe and enjoy your holidays and have a positive outlook in life and keep moving. Aja. Bye bye, everyone.